So we're going to talk about some techniques, some skills, and some mindsets that are needed for negotiation. But before we go there, I think it's very, very interesting कि negotiation है क्या? Because negotiation is actually a dialogue. यानी दो व्यक्ति हैं या दो parties हैं and they are talking to each other. That's one. There is an issue of conflict, but there is mutual interest. So दोनों उस टेबल पे इसलिए बैठे हैं because there is mutual interest and commonality, but there negotiation हो रहा है, इसका मतलब there is a sense of conflict there. And how do you reach a desired outcome? And a lot of us feel very uncomfortable with conflict. But the fact that you have that interesting conflict piece is what makes it a negotiation. क्योंकि अगर दोनों पार्टीज अग्री कर रहे होते तो नेगोशिएशन कहाँ था? तो सीधी सी बात थी. This is research-led statistics which says a lot of us do not like negotiation, and the reasons are the following. A lot of us feel nervous. मुश्किल लगता है, डर लगता है, और क्या मांगना है वो नहीं समझ में आता है. What are you scared of? What makes you uncomfortable about negotiation? Take a minute and think about it. Because of all of these thoughts in our head, don't even get to the negotiation table. We actually avoid having any kind of conversation. Or if we do have a conversation, it's not very thought through. So we're going to spend some time on saying what are we going to do before negotiation and after negotiation. I love this quote. So this is said by John F. Kennedy. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Because if you do not take the time out to negotiate, what you're doing is you're doing yourself a disservice. क्योंकि हम जब और आगे बढ़ेंगे तो you will see that negotiation करने से पहले जो काम करना पड़ता है उससे आपकी clarity बढ़ती है. उससे you come to a place where you feel more comfortable, powerful, you know what you're offering, and usually वो सब काम हम नहीं कर रहे होते हैं, इसलिए we have a fear of negotiation. Two things are extremely critical before negotiation, and both things require a lot of research. The first thing is establish your objectives, and the second thing is establish other parties' objectives. Now looks like a very simple thing, पर करना क्या है? So I'm going to ask you to think of one place that you already want to negotiate, or you already are hoping कि यार ये जगह एक negotiation करना है, मेरे को इस client के पास जाना है. Think of that scenario as you think of how do you establish your own objectives and how do you establish objectives of the other people. So let's start with the first one. What is the work that you need to do to establish your own objectives? So number one, what is your overall goal? What are you trying to achieve? And a lot of us will say, अरे बहुत simple है यार, मुझे ये सस्ते में खरीदना है, या मुझे ये इतने में बेचना है. That is what I'm trying to achieve. No, you are trying to achieve many other things. So take the time to write down what is your overall goal. I'm going to tell you a very, very interesting story. A friend of mine had come over. I used to live in Delhi at that point of time, and there's a place called Delhi Hut, and she said मुझे घूमने जाना है, मुझे shopping करनी है. I said ठीक है, let me take you. So I took her to Delhi Hut, and we went shopping, and she wanted to buy something. So what was very interesting is that she stopped at this shop and she started talking to this person कि मुझे ये अच्छा लग रहा है, ये बहुत सुंदर लग रहा है, ऐसा है. And I could see that the conversation was going towards negotiation, because वो बोल रहा था X रुपए का है, वो बोल रही थी नहीं इतना दूंगी मैं. And my first instinct was भैया तू negotiate कर ले, मैं जा रही हूँ यहाँ से. So I went and stood on the side. I said तुम कर लो भाई, तुम दोनों को जो करना है, but I don't want to get involved in this. And then she kept on having this conversation in a very nice way, understanding, talking to him. तुम कब से आए हो यहाँ पे, क्या करते हो, कैसे करते हो, ये कैसे बनाते हो. And very interestingly, after a 15-minute conversation, she got the price she wanted. थोड़ा सा ऊपर उससे. After the thing was over, I went away and I asked Sheetal, 5 रुपए extra देकर क्या फर्क पड़ता था? You could have given 5 rupees extra, ना? And you know what she said, which is what I will remember forever. She said, अरे मज़ा कितना आया? मैंने बोला क्या मज़ा आया? बोलते उसको भी कितना मज़ा आया, वो सारा टाइम स्माइल कर रहा था, उसने कितना कुछ बताया अपने बारे में, और मुझे कितना मज़ा आया, मुझे कितना जानने को मिला. ये एक ज्वेलरी का पीस था, पर उसके अलावा मुझे क्या मिला. It was so fascinating. And therefore, when you are going to the negotiating table, you have many goals. Write down what your overall goals are. It's not just to say, हाँ ठीक है मुझे सबसे सस्ते में लेना है. There are other things that are there. So that's the first thing you do when you start, before going on to the negotiation room, is put down and establish your entire objectives. If you're going into high-powered, big deals, big ticket size negotiations, please do a SWOT analysis. माने क्या? आपकी strengths क्या है negotiation में? And those are both your products or service. What can you emphasize in these negotiations? आपकी vulnerabilities कहाँ lie करती है? Are you priced above the market? Are you priced at the same level as the market? क्या आपका product to market time ज़्यादा है as compared to the competitor? So where do your vulnerabilities lie? Threats में आप ये सोचेंगे कि आपका काउंटर पार्टी यानी जिसके साथ आप नेगोशिएट कर रहे हैं, बट व्हाट आर द थिंग्स विच आर बियॉन्ड योर कंट्रोल. हो सकता है उसको कुछ ऐसा कुछ चाहिए जो आप दे ही नहीं सकते हो. दोज आर ऑल थ्रेट्स एंड देन अपॉर्चुनिटीज. सो इट टेक्स अ वाइल, बट sit down and for big negotiations, definitely sit down to write down strength, weakness, threats and opportunities. Third point is next, remember to identify interests and needs. Again, ये हम भूल जाते हैं, ये बहुत important है. Why do you want this deal to happen? Do you want this deal because ये organizational का short term है या मेरे को मार्च तक ये close करनी है deal? So you will do a different deal if you're saying अच्छा मुझे मार्च तक close करनी है तो, because I only have 20 days left of March. और आई एम सेइंग यार ये मुझे इस साल के तो डील क्लोज ही नहीं करनी, आई एम ट्राइंग टू बिल्ड अ पाइपलाइन फॉर द नेक्स्ट ईयर. सो व्हाट आर योर इंटरेस्ट एंड नीड्स, पर्सनल, ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल? टेक द टाइम टू फिगर इट आउट एंड राइट इट आउट, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम्स वी गो इन टू द कॉन्वर्जेशन विद ओनली वन थॉट इन द हेड, एंड व्हेन वी डोंट हैव डिफरेंट फैसेट्स टू आवर नेगोशिएशन, वो एक चीज़ पे हम अटक के रह जाते हैं. एंड एक्सट्रीमली इंपॉर्टेंट, प्रिपेयर अ लिस्ट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस you will ask. Don't assume, and we've talked about this many times. Assumption is making an ass out of you and me. Identify करें कि क्या क्या सवाल पूछने हैं ताकि मैं अपने आप को एकदम क्लियर कर सकूं कि उसको क्या चाहिए और मुझे क्या चाहिए. So take the time for at least big deals, big conversations, and at least till you're building a muscle for negotiation, to sit down, do your SWOT analysis, identifying needs for yourself, and preparing a list of questions. मुझे क्या क्या अचीव करना है इसमें से, एंड वॉट इज इट दैट आई वॉन्ट टू गेट टू नो फ्रॉम द अदर पर्सन. एंड दिस इज एक्सट्रीमली इम्पॉर्टेंट. प्लीज फिगर आउट नॉट जस्ट द प्राइस बट द वैल्यू. वॉट इज द वैल्यू ऑफ योर सर्विस, प्रोडक्ट और सोल्यूशन? वॉट डू यू सेल? और ये बहुत सिंपल सा सवाल लगता है, बट आई वॉन्ट यू टू ऑल टेक अ मिनट एंड से व्हाट डू यू सेल. आप क्या बेचते हैं? Establish the value of your products, because otherwise it's going to be a conversation where you are going to get stuck in this trap of, oh, it's too expensive. Now these are all very interesting mind things that you need to be very, very clear of as you step into the arena. And a very interesting term in negotiation is known as the Batna. Batna is the best alternative to negotiated agreement. Think about what is it that you bring to the table and how much are you willing to move. So if you look at this diagram that you can see on your screen, there is a scope of negotiation, because what the buyer is willing to do versus what the seller is willing to do is different. नहीं तो आप नीचे का देखेंगे तो बायर की रेंज बोल रहा है, बायर बोलता है मैं यहाँ से यहाँ तक देने को तैयार हूँ, प्राइस हो और कोई चीज़ हो, एनीथिंग, right? Price, delivery time. The buyer is saying I am willing to give this much, and the seller is saying I am willing to give the top. And where both of them are meeting together is called ZOPA, which is the zone of agreement, basically possible agreement. Now it's very important for you, before you go into the negotiation, to know what is your Batna. मायने आप क्या agree कर सकते हैं, what is your worst case, and not only in terms of price. See, it's very interesting. I might be willing to give you the price that you're asking for, but I will say, no, can you give me 70% advance? Because now I have moved away from price as a discussion to saying, okay, let's talk about payment terms. And therefore, take the time to figure out what is your Batna, and if you can, try and figure out what is their space. A lot of times, a lot of us go into conversations and we commit to things and we kind of move forward. And then we realize, अरे ये तो हो नहीं सकता, या ये कर नहीं सकते हम. And these are all things that you will do before you go into the negotiation. And again, before you go into the negotiation room, take the time to understand the other party's objectives. क्या personalities हैं? A lot of times you know when you are working with somebody कि यार ये बहुत ज़्यादा झिक करते हैं. You will go in with a very different price range. You will go in with very different stories. There are people you know कि इसको X बोलेंगे ना, इसको बोलेंगे यार तो ईस्ट में चल तो वेस्ट में ही जाएगा. तो you start with a different conversation. So understand personalities that you're talking to. What is their history? How are they as paymasters? Have you done business with them earlier? Make all of those pointers as a part of your conversation. So write it down and figure out your Batna according to that. So let's say you have a client who says, यार ये ना उसने बहुत रो के पैसे दिए थे. So price is not a problem. What am I going to do? I'm going to see how I can get as much money in before the deal, than after the deal. Identify their organizational and personal needs. What are their drivers and motivators? What do they worry and care about? A lot of times you will be discussing and having a conversation with maybe a purchase head. What do they worry about? So if you talk to a lot of new purchase heads or purchase head who's trying to set up a new vendor, their biggest worry right now at that point of time is तुमको हमने दे दिया और तुमने deliver नहीं किया तो. But take the time to figure out how important is the project that you're supplying for. It could be product, service, solutions. How important is it for the organization? Because अगर वो organization के लिए वो project बहुत critical है, just imagine करें that you know that the part that you're going to supply is very critical for the organization. Your ability to negotiate is so different. And it does not mean you say, अरे मुझे मालूम है अब तेरे को ये part चाहिए मैं तेरे को नहीं दूंगा या फिर इतने में दूंगा. No, maybe I can negotiate ये part तो तू अभी ले जा. Maybe I can negotiate a promise for something else that I want later. पर वो आप जो बड़ा project लगा रहे हो उधर उसमें मुझे चाहिए. So it's not always about अभी क्या मिल सकता है. It's identifying what are their interests so that they can align with yours. And as you're thinking about you're listening to all of this, think about one negotiation that you might have done or you're going to do. Because जब आप उसको अपने दिमाग में stimulate करेंगे इतने सारे सवालों के साथ, you will start realizing अच्छा मैं इसको ऐसे भी कर सकता था, मैं ये भी कर सकता था, मैं वो भी कह सकता था. But please remember to take the time to understand the other party. Understand the specific issues and needs. क्या challenge है, price है, volume है, delivery है. You will be fascinated to realize कि हम सारा time price पे झगड़ा करते रह जाते हैं. We do not get other facets into the conversation. And I personally know of clients who will say कि मेरे को तेरे से ₹2 महंगा मिलता है पर मुझे ये मालूम है कि जब तू बोलेगा तब मिलेगा. मेरा दूसरा जो है वो पता नहीं कहाँ, he just disappears. So are you willing to put a delay clause? Are you willing to be held accountable? So we were having a very interesting conversation with a builder. We wanted to look at some property and we said क्योंकि वो बना रहा था, said are you willing to put a delay clause in your contract, which means अगर delay होगा beyond this many days, so you will compensate us. And very interestingly, we agreed to everything else. The price was a little higher, but that was okay because the person was willing to put a delay clause. Because the person was saying, that's okay. I am willing to pay you back X amount of money if it doesn't happen till this date. Understand their specific needs. If you are the customer, you're going to meet the customer, figure out उसको क्या क्या चाहिए हो सकता है और वो आपके लिए कितना संभव है और आपके लिए कितना important है. Because that will give you all of these thoughts when you go into the room to have the conversation. Because ये सब आप पहले कर रहे हैं. This is just you thinking so that when you go into the room, you are prepared. A lot of us do not like negotiation because we do not prepare well enough for negotiation. And then it's a cycle. And study their Batna. In a lot of deals, you are able to figure out उसने last time क्या लिया था. What was the challenges they faced. So take a minute and tell me what are the things that you can think of in Batna. So price is one of course. Yeah, price इस price से नीचे नहीं बेचूंगा. और क्या क्या add कर सकते हो Batna में? Quality assurance, brilliant. Assured business. I can do a contract with you, rate contract कि मैं सारा business तुझे दूंगा. Therefore I will have a different ball game. Payment terms, timely delivery. What else? Knowledge sharing, absolutely Parul. Sometimes you will go and say, I will educate your entire staff on this. So I remember, I think a Bombay organization wanted our success planners. And as usual you say, अरे डायरी तो 100 रुपए की भी मिलती है. Why are you charging us 700 rupees? तो बात तो सही है, डायरी तो 100 रुपए की भी मिलती है. We said we will train 100 of your people on time management. No other person who is going to sell a diary is going to be able to do that. Because they are selling a diary, we are selling a success planner. And they said, yeah, this is a brilliant idea, man. Right? So start thinking of things that you can bring to the table that nobody else can bring. Specs, quality, warranty, payment terms. Yes. Beautiful liability for customer plant stoppages, right? I will take charge of it. अगर तुम्हारा plant बंद होता तो मेरा problem है. Don't worry about it. All of this before you go into the room. Now when you're in the room, you're going to shift to that. When you're in the room and you're doing the negotiations, what is it all about? Build connections because they lead to trust. Now, this is a very interesting study of 1980 where random people were asked on a street, you give me $5 and I will give you $10 back. and not kal parson. I will give you $10 back in the next 30 minutes. Can you take a guess how many people gave those $5 to make it $10? 100% profit मिलने वाला था. Only about 6% of people took that deal. Rest 94% did not take the deal because there was no trust. So remember to build rapport in the room because connections lead to trust. We do not like to work with people who we do not like. We do not like to spend time with people we do not like. So try and build a connection, which means थोड़ा सा रिसर्च भी करना पड़ेगा इस पे कि वो व्यक्ति को जिसके साथ आप डिस्कशन करो क्या पसंद है, what is their style like, and of course you can spend time in the room and that's also fine.
I have experienced myself and I do it often. मैं अपना पर्स निकालता हूँ और किसी से अजनबी से जब बात करता हूँ तो बोलता हूँ यार मेरे पास एक 500 का नोट आ गया है कहीं से, अब अगर इसके कोई मेरे को 300 रुपए भी दे दे तो मैं उसको दे दूंगा. आज तक किसी ने उसको नहीं लिया, मेरे देखा भी नहीं नोट को. ऐसा क्यों? इसका जवाब नीरू मैम आप दीजिए.
I think सर जवाब दे दिया आपने, but yeah, absolutely. There is no trust and therefore spend that time in negotiation. And many times you will know that when you go to the table it may not be the best and therefore sometimes building rapport you might want to spend before that. The second thing in the room to remember, and it's a very powerful one, is set and manage the agenda. It's a very powerful way. So when you're sitting in the conversation, you say, "Aaj hum ye, I want to listen to you a little bit on what are your challenges, where are you struggling, and with what product or service are you struggling, and how can we deal with it?" And then of course finish with cutting the deal. आपने क्या किया? आपने वो रूम को फ्रेम कर दिया, एक सीक्वेंस दे दी. Now it will take a very different ball game to change the sequence because now you've set the sequence. You will wait for the other party to start talking. If you know the person you're negotiating with, attempt to go first. But if you do not know the person you're negotiating with, allow the other person to do them. So you're not clear about their grounds. But set and manage the agenda in the room. It's a very powerful way of becoming to the driver's seat. Asking questions and staying silent. It's a very, very powerful trick again. And some questions, you will get this, so don't worry about it. These are some very powerful questions that you can ask in the room. How will you know success? आप क्या देख रहे हो? What do you want to achieve out of this? और इसमें से बहुत कुछ हम ILEAD में प्रैक्टिस करते हैं. So it's great. Ask, remember to ask, listen, show confidence, power poses use करें before you go into the room.